This is Mrs. Murphy here at Weber State University, and today we're going to show you how to use variables in Java. We're going to talk about them first, then we're going to demonstrate with a simple program using our window.java class. We're going to create a simple cookie clicker kind of type program. Well, first of all, we're going to compare what we know about variables and then how we use them in programming. Well, we use variables in math. In math, they were unknown values. We're always trying to solve for x, it seemed like, when I was in high school or college, and there were always numbers. Well, in programming, variables are still stored values, but we're not trying to solve for them. We're going to use them to do calculations. For example, we can store data from the user into a variable and then make a calculation based upon that value that the user entered in, even though we don't even know what that value is. So variables in programming can be more than numbers. You can store name, date, time, MP3, movie file. Anything digital can be stored as a variable. The type of the variable will determine what it will store. In this class, we're just going to discuss 3 types, even though there's tons more. So an int is for whole numbers. So anytime you have like age or how many people are in the room, well, you don't want 2.5 people in the room, well, unless someone's pregnant or something. That would be an int. Float is for real numbers or numbers that might have decimal points, like money values. You don't want to get shorted that 99 cents. Now anything else, such as text or names or addresses have numbers and text, that would still be a string. Now keep in mind, if you look at int, float, and string, int is lowercase, float is lowercase, but string is kind of a different thing on its own. So a string does have an uppercase S on it. In math, we name variables x or y or some other random letter. Well, in programming, we're going to use so many variables that you got to name it with a little bit more of a descriptive name. It's going to have that Hungarian notation, so we're going to use the first letter of the data type. So if it's int, it's I. If it's string, it's S. And it's a lowercase s, even though string is technically uppercase, but still. Then you use camel case, so you just, the words of the variable become all uppercase letters all run together to become those humps on the camel. You don't want any spaces in your variable names whatsoever, and they do want to be like descriptive, like you don't want to name your first name peanut butter or something like that. All right, so something descriptive. Here is an example of a variable that could store a first name. Since the name is text, the data type will be string. So we use our Hungarian notation. S will be the first letter of the variable name. Then we run the words first and name together to make each of the letters uppercase. Don't forget the camel humps. Well, on the bad idea side, your code will not run if there's a space in the variable name. So first space name would not be valid, and your program would actually not compile. The second one name, it can't start with a number. That would also not compile either. Well, third, if you name it n, that would actually compile, but you're going to have so many variables that how are you going to know what n is? And so you want something a little bit more descriptive than that. I've done programs with the students in the past to convert your age into dog years. So here we need a variable to store the dog's years. Usually when you speak of years old, you talk about whole numbers. That is, anyone who's not 7.5 trying to get out of sitting in a booster chair in the car. I'm 7.5, Mom. Well, anyway, so dog years would be an int, and it would start with a lowercase I. Then dog and years would run together in capital letters for the humps of the camel. Okay, we're going to show you how to use some Java variables by creating a little Java program. We're going to have a little cookie clicker. You remember that cookie clicker game online? Well, that's kind of what we're doing. We're going to have a timer that counts down, and then we're going to see how many times the user can press on the cookie to get as many points as they can in their given time frame. All right, so all I've done is I've taken that window.java file from the previous chapter, and from the graphics chapter, and we're gonna modify this code. Now it might be helpful to be able to rename this something other than window, so I want to show you how to do that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the find replace, and I'm going to find window.java, and I'm going to replace it with my cookie clicker. Now you want to make sure that it's case sensitive, because there's things in there that we don't want changed out We just want the word window exactly how it is. So I'm going to replace all of those items, and it should only replace 3 things. And then we're going to do a save as. So go to the File pop-down menu and say Save As, and it'll automatically come up as our cookie clicker. So then we can go ahead and hit Save. So in this program, we're going to use a couple of variables. We have our timer right here, and our timer, I was incorrect on this comment in the previous section. It executes 20 times per second. So I'll just update that comment so we can see what we got. Okay, so now I'm going to put a couple of variables. Now the variables I'm going to use, I'm going to put up here at the top. The reason I'm going to put them up at the top is because if you put them in one of these codes, these little code locations, you can only use them in those locations. If you put them at the top, you can use it anywhere inside of our class. The first thing I want is I want a variable for the number of clicks that the user's going to click on them with the mouse, to click the cookie. So I'm going to say private. Now private just means we're just going to use it in our my code, and it's protected a little bit by putting private. It means nothing else can access this variable. And now this is number of clicks is a whole number. You can't have half a click, and so I'm going to say int, and I'm going to call it iClicks. I stands for int, and then here's the little hump of the camel, so the uppercase C. I'm going to start it at 0, and I'm going to put a semicolon. Semicolon's like the period at the end of a sentence in this language. So this is just going to store the number of clicks the user has done. Now I want a variable for my time. Now my timer counts 20 times per second, so I'm going to count up by 0.05 each time, so it's like 0.05 of a second. That way it will be in seconds, if that makes sense. So I'm going to do a double this time. So I'm going to say private double. Plus I wanted to show you how to use a double, I guess. Now since it's a double, I'm going to say D, and I'm going to set it to time. So D time, and then here you can put how many seconds you want your game to last. So I'm going to have my game last 30 seconds. Okay, now of course we have to draw a big cookie on the screen. Actually the cookie does pretty much nothing, so if you want to leave this part out you can, but you can't have a cookie clicker game without a cookie. So here we go. I'm going to set the color to some sort of shade of brown. So I just went on to Paint and checked the numbers on this, and this would be some sort of shade of brown for my chocolate or vanilla wafer. Now I'm going to do a fill oval to cover in my cookie with brown. So I'm going to do maybe 200 pixels across, so it's kind of centered in the screen, 50 pixels down, and it's going to be a circle, so I'm going to do 400 by 400 pixels. Now I want my text, my variables, to show up on the screen because I want to be able to see how many times I've clicked, and I want to be able to see what my time is, how many seconds I have left. So I'm going to do a g.drawString, and I want it to say clicks. And so the word clicks is going to appear on the screen. Now I want my variable iClicks to show up as well. And then I have to position it. So I'm going to say I want this 50 pixels over and 50 pixels down. Might make it a nice, easy number. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the timer. So my timer, I'm going to say timer. And then I'm going to add in the actual variable. My variable is called dtime. And this is also going to be 50 pixels over, but if I put it 50 pixels down, then it will be covered up, or it'll cover up the clicks. So I'm going to put this one a little lower. Maybe I'll put this 100 pixels down. So my draw is now working, and we can run our cute little program, and I can always spell oval wrong for some reason. I don't know why I cannot spell that word. Yay, operation complete. So now I have a big cookie, and I have the number of clicks, and I've got my timer all showing on the screen. So now we're going to make it do this. We're going to make it so when they click on the cookie, it increments the clicks, and the timer will count down. Okay, so to keep track of the number of clicks, we'll do that first. I'm going to put this in my mouse press, and I'm going to tab this over just at one tab. That way I can see easily that everything in here is actually in this mouse press. This is where it begins, this is where it ends, and everything inside is going to be tabbed over once. Similar to what I've done here. All of these commands are tabbed over once just so I can see here's where my code begins and ends. And it would work if it wasn't. It's just easier to keep your code clean. Alright, so now I don't want to count any clicks once the timer has done executing. So I'm going to put a simple if statement in there. I'm going to say if dTime is greater than 0, that's when I want to count the clicks. I'm going to put an opening squiggly and a closing squiggly. There's my opening, there's my closing. And in between here, once again, I'm going to tab this over so I could see easily what's inside the if statement. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to say iClicks plus plus. So now, every time I click, it's going to count 1. And we can check this out. I'm going to hit my little run button again, and it always appears on my other screen. So now anytime I click on the cookie, it counts my clicks. Now really, and this we can kind of cheat. It's anywhere you click. We didn't specify that we want it in the cookie. But, you know, got to have a cookie on there. Otherwise, it's not called a cookie clicker game. So now I'm going to get my timer going, and that will be it for this particular program. So here's my code for my timer. And I want my timer to count down. It's already at 30. And so here, but once it gets to 0, I want it to stop counting down. So I'm going to do a similar if statement that I did in my mouse press. I'm going to say if dTime is greater than 0. Then I have my opening squiggly bracket and my closing squiggly bracket, and my closing is lined up with my if statement. And in here, all I'm going to do is count down. So dTime minus equals, and since it's 20 times, this executes 20 times per second. If I subtract 0.05, that means it will count down 1 second every second, really, I guess. And that is it. That is it to our cookie clicker program. Now, if you want, the title in the title bar is set right here. Yours probably is defaulting to window or whatever I had it set to. I can't remember. You can type the word cookie clicker here. That way it will appear in the title bar. So now I'm going to run this program, and you're going to see how fast I can cook my cookie. Oh, going. Now the last thing I want to show you, I did after watching this program, I do want to show you one other thing. If you look, see how this number is showing way out there some really strange things? We can chop this off to just show the number of seconds. So let's show you how to do that. I drew that in the draw. So if you find the draw, here's my g.drawString for my timer. And this is showing all of the decimal points. Now we want to keep the decimal points there, but we don't have to display them. If I temporarily change this to an int and say int dTime, now it's not going to show any of the milliseconds. It will only show the exact seconds. So now if I run this again and bring this over, there we go. And it doesn't matter which mouse button you use. You can use both at the same time. That way you can kind of, cheat and make the game go faster. See if you guys can beat, I don't know, how many clicks did I have last time? 88? Well, that is the end of this program. Good luck with the cookie clicker, and hopefully this will help you out on the homework assignment.